Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the Horus cards. So to kind of start, I guess, I think the Horus cards not that great. In fact, they look rather useless unless they get some new support or something. But yeah, if we just look at the Horus cards, just standalone, right? They literally do not make sense to me, right? So if we open King Sark or Imseti, that's essentially going to be um the what we use the Horus cards for. But if we look at what the Horus cards actually do, they don't really do much, honestly. So all of the Horus cards that you'll be playing have this effect. You control King Sarcophagus, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. This effect, or this is not an effect, this is an ignition summon actually. And it is hard once per turn. So it does not start a chain, which is a little bit interesting, but it honestly doesn't mean that much. If we really think about it, what does this realistically do for you? I'd say not much. The best card technically for you to open is Imseti, but also technically the worst card to open can also be Imseti. So we'll go over what I mean. So to kind of visualize this, let's pretend that we have uh, let's pretend these five cards here represent our hand cards, and these extra deck cards here represent our opponent's hand cards. So if we activate Imseti, we're going to discard Imseti along with like another card. Actually, it's not discard; it's sent to the graveyard, which is a little bit worse. So that doesn't work under macro. But all right, we do this, and we would typically draw one card, right? But let's say we just get ashed here. Now we just have three cards in hand, and our opponent has four cards. And this is pretty bad because there is, in general, not a single card almost in the game where just sending it for cost would be good here. So in this case, our graveyard would have Imseti plus one other unknown card. The only deck I know of that doesn't find this situation horrendous is specifically Orcust. If we sent either like an Orcust Nightmare or Harporer. Probably preferably Harporer, because with Nightmare, we would still need a monster on the field, right? So target one, face a monster on the field, and then we can send Harp off of Nightmare essentially. That's the idea here. So hopefully we'd have like a decent normal summon after this if we had sent Nightmare, but if we send Harp, our opponent already ashed, and then we can just try to Orcus combo off of this. And if they imperm, uh, at this point, right, we're looking at 3-3 in terms of like just cards in hand, right? But Orcust is the only deck that I know of that can pull off something like this. Aside from that, there's probably nothing. So, in general, then we can assume the card you sent, unless you're playing like Orcust, it probably is a card that does nothing in the graveyard. Pretty likely. So then, in this case, now we have three cards in hand, staring down four, which is already a worse situation. And if we trade off like one more, let's assume we need to actually use our normal summon for whatever we're trying to do, right? So that's one card down. Our opponent drops like Imperm or Veiler. Now we are down to just uh, two cards, right? But you also have to consider we're also running a lot more of the worse cards than just Imseti, right? So there's going to be King Sark and then Imseti. Every other subsequent Imseti in your hand is going to be a Garnet. King Sarcophagus is just not good. So if we take a step back here, let's say we try to search a different King Sark to our hand with Imseti. Now if we activate King Sark from this point, this is the peak miserable uh, I guess, situation. So if we activate King Sark from hand, that'll put us to two cards in hand. Then we can send card, so it doesn't really matter what this card is, I guess. So we send that card, and then we can send, well, a copy of any other horse aside from Imseti, and then we get a small payoff for the cost of essentially 4 cards in hand, and our opponent has still 4 cards in hand. Here in this case, we can now make a single rank 8, and yeah, just to go over this real quick. In terms of rank 8s, what do we actually have to make? Okay, so we have a few options. We can make Hope Harbinger for a single spell negate, not spell trap negate, spell negate. Epic. We have Ingirsu, the Orchist of the Evening Star, which can send a monster our opponent, or not monster, send a card our opponent controls to the graveyard, non-targeting. Well, empty board, probably, because first turn. Then attach one of your banished machine monsters to this card as material. I'll bet there are none. And then there is Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord for like a single monster negate that turn. Yeah, that doesn't seem to really do much, huh? And then we have probably the best option at this point might be something like a Sanafond. Rika Teardrop the Rika Queen needs plants to activate as quick effect, so that's not an option. So in terms of like potential starters, I don't think Gigantic Champion Sargus is one either. I don't think this is a one card that gets you into something, right? At least I assume so, right? So that leaves the Zombie Vampire. So you mill 4 and hope you mill really good 4. That's about it. So you're putting your everything into a high roll, pretty much, and you have 1 card in hand. So not really the best situation to be in, but okay. What if we just simply don't do that? Okay, how about we take a few steps back and try not to worry about this too much, you know? Okay, so what if instead we just open King's Sarcophagus, right? So we activate King's Sarcophagus. That's 1 card, right? And then we need to send 2 cards in order to make a rank 8. Oh, look, would you look at that? Our hand cards now is at 2. Not great. And this allows us to make 1 rank 8 for the cost of 3 of our hand cards, essentially. You could call this a 3-card combo. Now, obviously, what could you possibly do with 3 cards in hand? I don't know. What if your 3 hand cards were Snake Eye Ash, Ash Blossom Joy Spring, and then Bonfire? What could you possibly do with, I don't know, 3 cards in hand, you know? Kashtira Unicorn, Raidsoth, Kashtira Theosis, or something like that, you know? Just, obviously, there's also something like, I don't know, Kashtira Unicorn, Fissure, and then Theosis. What could you possibly do with 3 cards in hand, you know? Clearly, there's even maybe something you could like say like, I don't know, diameter circular with parallel exceed. Yeah, obviously, yeah, I'll just send 3, essentially, well, send 2 cards from hand as like cost, and then yeah, I will for sure not suffer. And if you think about it, even if we get Ash here, we can still send another card, right? But do you even want to send another card? Because if you send another card, like if Kingstark gets ashed, you're left with this. Like, and then if you were to try to use the zombie vampire at this point, what does that really accomplish? You're just trying to really high roll here. And this is all just considering, of course, only going first. If we were going second, yeah, we're already like getting obliterated by a single Ash Blossom, right? Like, if we just try to resolve King Sark and then we get Ash once, uh, technically we would be at 2 cards in hand because we drew 1 for a turn if we're going second. So, our hand still looks like this, and we have yet to, like... And, well, I guess this is the point where we would make, like, a single rank 8. More or less, right? So, yeah, not looking great. I don't really see a reason to play Horus, right? And there is technically, well, there are technically ways to kind of bypass the cost of King Sark sending. If we run, like, one of those engines along King Sark, it gets even more garnety, but technically, if you were to do so, King Sark might be somewhat valuable or useful, but only somewhat. You also have to keep in mind, of course, the Horus cards essentially have no effects. Aside from, like, Imseti in hand, these guys are all essentially Blue Eyes White Dragon, and you're just going to send them to the graveyard or use them as, like, link fodder or whatever, so extra deck fodder in general. That's about all these guys do, so you're not building back the lost advantage in the slightest. You have to keep that in mind, right? So if we, for example, we're playing, like, let's go with the example of back to, like, Snake Eye, right? If we were to normal summon or activate Wanted, right? If we activate Wanted, grab Diabell Star effect to send, we can then just draw 1 card off of Wanted later to get back, like, for the cost of Diabell Star sending a card. And you also search off of Snake Eye Ash and stuff next turn. And these guys don't really set you up anymore. Next turn, I guess they summon back, which is about it. So, also, no bueno, I guess. In general, not that useful. But if you think about it, right? We activate Bonfire, that grabs us Poplar, and then we can go Snake Eye Ash to grab a card, like Snake Eye Oak, and then we don't even have to normal summon Oak. We could even add, like, Kurikara Divincarnate or something like that. Formula to discard, right? And then summon later. There are, like, a lot of ideas you could do with, like, essentially Snake Eye, right? And it's much more versatile, and in fact, we can also play around Nib with them, technically, right? If we make UDF with, like, Horus, we have to send for cost, so sending for cost is already bad enough. If it specifically was send for effect, we wouldn't be able to get, like, ashed on King Sark and suffer as hard, but it is what it is, I suppose. Despite being, like, able to send up to 4 times per turn, do you really want to send up to 4 times per turn? You want to send, like, the minimal amount that you need to with King Sark, because it's just, in general, not going to go well for you. So, you gotta keep in mind, though, for example, like, Maxi is in our game of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So let's assume our opponent opens Maxi. One of these cards is going to be guaranteed Maxi, right? And having 2 hand traps in hand is pretty common, right? So if we do a bit of a handcrafted hand here, we'll go like this. We opened Imseti, King Sarcophagus, and then let's do Rhino, Tier Cash, and then let's throw in Ash Blossom Joe Spring, right? So this is our opening hand, right? So this hand looks pretty decent, right? Or so it should be, right? So if we activate Imseti here, okay, activate Imseti, and we'll discard either Tier Cash or King Sark and attempt to add King Sark, right? So assuming we want to resolve the Horus cards, let's say we send Tier Cash here, okay? Our opponent ashes us, so we trade for essentially nothing here. Tier Cash doesn't even trigger, right? And people, of course, are saying that Tier is supposedly good before, so yeah. Okay, so here, now we have King Sark. This is what will happen when we try to activate King Sark. So now, when we King Sark, if we want to actually have a consistent combo, we have no choice but to pitch the Ash Blossom here, so we can summon Imseti alongside one other Horus card. So if we do this, then we're left with Rhino. Our opponent activates Maxi here before we special summon. Now we only have Rhino in hand. Okay. So if we were to try to do something with Rhino, our opponent will draw, right? So if we just pass on this, it's not that great because our opponent is going second, so they'll draw another card for a turn, and we have essentially nothing. We pass on literally an empty board with just King Sark here in this case, and our opponent has 4 cards in hand, and we have no interruptions anywhere. So not great. So let's walk it back. So let's put Ash Blossom Spring back in hand, and what if instead we were to just normal summon Rhino here? This would be better, right? But still, not that great. This will still be only Rukalu's Pass, and our opponent will be back to 4 cards in hand the next turn, and they're going to be against Rukalu's Pass. Or you could try to high roll by sending Kick Kalos, I guess, and summoning, I guess, Tearcash. So there's that. And in this case, what exactly did the Horus cards do? They made you go -2. That's it. If we take even more steps back, you know? What if instead we actually started with activating King Sark? Then we have still the same amount of cards in hand. Send Imseti here. Okay, we get Ash here. Now we send different card. We send Deercash. And we're back to pretty much the same point here, but a little bit better. If Maxi here, we have Ash, right? To kind of negate the Maxi. And this puts us at 1 card in hand. So as you can see, our Horus cards here, like, cannibalized our entire hand, essentially. And that's a bit miserable, right? So, also not great there, but still better than what we did with Imseti. Could be worse, I guess. So if we were to have been King Sark with Imseti, the best option is not to hold on to King Sark here, but just to use it and send Imseti anyways, because honestly, Imseti is kind of just trash. But even then, let's say we resolve Imseti, so we just go like this, and then we have King Sark in hand, and 1 unknown card, so doesn't matter. Let's say it's Wingdig of New Life, for all we know. Doesn't really care, or it doesn't really matter. So then we activate King Sark, and then we're going to send, I guess in this case, we might want to keep this. Could be like another hand trap, actually, so sure. Could be something like this, could be a starter, doesn't super matter. But then we send King Sark, and now we're at 3 cards in hand. And this is without interruption, hopefully. But then, like, if we get Ash tier or something on the zombie vampire, we're looking a lot better. So, in this case, right, I think it looks like it's worse to wait for the zombie vampire because your opponent has to cannibalize their hand so hard. Like, if you negate either the Imseti or the King Sark, that it's purely worth to just drop hand traps at this point. But even then, right, you're not looking that great. So this is assuming a lot of things. But yeah, it's not great if we look in terms of like hand cards, right? This is going first. This is the best the deck is going to get, right? Well, the best the engine is going to get. If we were going second, like, I could do quite a few, like, different things. So, assuming with Horus, you I guess, have 6 cards in hand and no response. The horse stuff doesn't really help you play going second that well. So let's assume we want to use our horse cards once again. So this time we're not going to concern ourselves worrying about tier or what other cards we have in hand, just in general, right? So we have 6 cards in hand. If we activate Imseti, go -2, draw 1 back, and then you also grab King Sark here. Activate King Sark, send a guy. So here, that costs 2 cards in hand. Best case scenario. Then we can try make Gingirsu, try attack go Zeus, clear the board maybe. Our opponent, if they have like a single negate that's a little bit too strong, or some way to deal with this, like let's assume it's Snake Eye, and our opponent simply just goes ahead and when we activate our Imseti, our opponent actually will go IP, make Apollosa. If that is the case, we can technically summon our 2 Horus cards, and then I guess try to run over Apo, which you could probably do that, I guess, but let's assume we aren't trying to do that. In that case, we just get Apo negated on the zombie vampire, Dingirsu, whatever we try to make, so that's no bueno. If we actually try to make Dingirsu instead of just running over by battle, our opponent can then go Link Rebo to stop like Dingirsu from attacking over Apo. And also if you try to make Zeus after attacking with Ding into maybe like a defense position like Snake Eye Ash or something, then we can negate Zeus's activation and still have like 1 more activation on Apollosa here left over. So you'll probably, assuming you're still playing into this, you're trading 1 more card for this. And this is like best case scenario essentially. And this is only considering mostly just IP, make Apollosa, right? And then Link Revo. Of course, if we get like hand trap, oh, Ash Blossom on M City. Okay, now you have 4 cards in hand to play through their board, which is much worse, depending on, of course, how many hand traps they have. And if they have another hand traps trade for about 1 for 1, so now you have 3 cards to play through the entirety of your opponent's board after activating like your Horus card. So also not great. If we specifically start with King Sark, we activate King Sark from our hand, and then we send 2 cards, leaving us once again with 3 cards in hand, and we send 2 cards from hand like this, so we can send like I guess maybe Imseti plus 1 other Horus card, and once again we're left like this, right? So the going second ability on this is going to be awful unless you have something like Orchist once again, right? So Orchist, you'd be able to activate those cards, the ones you sent from hand, and it won't feel like you're going this negative, right? So yeah, pretty miserable. So in terms of like the card advantage on this, unless there's a deck that has really good synergy with like the King Sark sending or being sent to the graveyard with your Horus cards, Horus looks definitively, at least to me, like unplayable, right? If we were to do like just a moderate combo, this would look completely awfully unplayable. So I gotta pull up something that's not too strong, I guess, which is the difficulty I have here. So let's say we end with like Rescue Ace, sure, right? So literally all we are going to do is like summon, I guess, Turbulence and nothing else, right? So we Turbulence, and then we grab, let's say, Contain, and then extinguish, grabbing as well, emergency, and nope, alert. I think we want, um, is it rescue or alert? Well, okay, sure. Let's go with alert, I guess. Sure. Is this just a rescue ace card? No, this is a monster. How about this one? Target one, once in your graveyard or if you control. Target one monster in your opponent's graveyard instead. Special summon it to your field. This summons a rescue ace from your graveyard, right? Yeah, that's probably the one you prefer then. So let's grab copy a rescue then. So these are the 4 cards we have alongside Turbulence, right? So let's just assume this, okay? And then let's grab these guys again. So let's say we start with Imseti. Send Imseti plus 1 random card, draw 1 card, activate King Sark, right? So, okay, we do that. And then we send a card. And then we summon our 2 Horus monsters. None of them can be over Turbulence, right? Because Turbulence is 3,000, right? So Turbulence in defense should not be possible to run over with any of our Horus cards, right? Yeah. Seems true enough. So, next, let's say we make a guy. Our opponent can then just, before we do anything, I guess, we can start with activate emergency. Yes, or not emergency, is it? Oh yeah, emergency to send our hydrant and then special summon hydrant because why not? And then let's say we summon the zombie vampire. We can extinguish it or we can contain it. Doesn't matter. Yeah, you're just down 2 cards. And then, well, you're down 3 cards in this case, I guess. We'll normal summon a guy, and then that one gets contained or extinguished as well. So now you have 2 cards in hand. And our opponent here likely still has 4 cards in hand. Straight up. So, we're looking at, like, this situation. And this is, like, the weakest board I could think of, unironically, so, what now? Very big what now. Our opponent has yet to throw any hand traps at us, so this is without taking into account hand traps. And also, like, the cards we have to run to deal with hand traps, right? So if we have an Ash Blossom Joe Spring here, we would need, like, a 1-card starter here. So 1-card starter, plus maybe Kuldai or Ash to do anything with. Okay. And then our opponent probably has, like, actually, like, just two to 3 cards in hand after, like, just summoning a Turbulence. So what is the game plan here? Yeah. If we get hand trapped on our starter, because there's no way you have 2 starters left, pretty much. So, what plan? Yeah, I don't think there is a good plan at this point. So, you lose. So, that's how it would go. If you don't have any, like, graveyard trigger cards like the Orcus, I guess, at least. So, this, in my opinion, makes this like just the Horus engine not splashable at all, like outside of within like something like an Orchist, because I don't think there's anything else that's worth triggering. If we did Phantom Knights, honestly there aren't even that many good sends. It does keep your hand cards up though, which is nice. So if we were to, for example, send Ancient Cloak, we can then add like Silent Boots or Torrent Scales or something. So that's good, I guess. Except if we grab Torn Scales, for example, and normal summon Torn Scales, sure, we can bypass the cost a little bit by using like an Ancient Cloak, but you also do want to use these effects to combo and not just do this. So that is another negative. And then if we were to add Torn Scales actually would need to send another card anyways. So we're left with like no hand cards if we use the Horus cards just willy-nilly with like random archetypes, right? So this is essentially the problem with Horus. The send for cost makes it pretty bad, and there's no payoff, and all of these guys are essentially vanilla monsters. So with all of those things combined, Horus as an engine seems pretty awful, right? And this is just in general, right? This isn't considering, I guess, Horus with Orchist, because that might as well be a different beast. If we were to consider it with like tier limit like before, you would have to specifically open like Rhino. If we had like Sharon plus Ash Blossom, yeah, that is not great to say the least, right? In a best case scenario, I guess you could open a Tribute Karma, which is typically run as a one of. In which case, you would probably would you want to even run like a bigger horse engine with also like multiple copies of Tribute Karma? Would that be an actual thing you would want to do? Like, seems kind of psychopathic. If we were to like run Rainbow Bridge of Salvation, I guess we can send the turtle we add to hand for cost of like King Sark, right? So assuming we activate King Sark, send Rainbow Bridge of Salvation, add the field spell alongside like the turtle, send turtle off of King Sark, like that'd be fine, right? So aside from like Orchist, pretty much exactly I'd say, you don't have any like cards with hard enough synergy with Horus in general. So you have to resort to essentially what I would call dirty tricks. So if we grab well, if we grab once again like 5 hand cards, essentially like this, right? So if we consider how steep the cost is, there is no way we can ever start our combos like with or our turns with activating the horse cards for the most part because it will just like brutalize our hand too much and we don't have hand cards, right? And of course you do need hand cards to go second. Like in a sense, right? So we need to be able to run like hand traps and stuff. If we have hand traps, uh they aren't good sends off of like King Sark. So we want in general keep that, but we don't want to send engine either because we're going to want to combo with that. But we do have to run stuff like Ash Blossom and Called By to deal with Maxi, and we have to keep those cards in hand, and we also don't want to send our combo pieces. So if you consider all of those elements, King Sark becomes pretty awful, right? So in that like earlier one of the earlier examples there, we had the choice of essentially sending Tier Limit Rhino Heart or Ash Blossom Joy Spring. If we send Rhino, we essentially have no further plays. If we send Ash Blossom Joy Spring, our opponent has like a Maxi in this case, we're absolutely going to get cooked. So yeah, pretty miserable regardless of outcome. And doesn't help that the line here is giga linear, right? So you don't really have options with this. But one of the ideas that's pretty simple is if we were to play Ghost Rig, we just need access to one of these guys, so I believe, right? Let's see. Actually, so Q Boss doesn't work, right? Okay, so it's just Alucard or Dolahan, and we can use these guys to make Utopic Draco Future. But this line is not like secure from like Nib or anything. But just let's grab these guys real quick actually. So let's say we do a 1 card for our Ghost Rig cards, right? If we do this, the Horus cards are much more reasonable to run, I would imagine. So we'll grab, I guess, for now, shot plus, I don't know, maybe renovation. I don't think it super matters, but okay. Let's grab Terratop and assume that this is what we're starting with. It doesn't super matter. But, okay. If we were to one card, right? Start, like, Terratop, add Takatomborg, special summon, we special summon both. We can then make Alucard, special summon into Angel of Mischief, adding Shot. And then here we'll activate Shot, bring back Alucard. We'll XYZ summon Ghostwreck Angel of Mischief, and then here we are going to want to activate Ghostwreck Angel of Mischief again here to search Renovation. And then if we do so, this will allow us to add back Shot, and then we can now Imseti for this, or we can Kingsark this. And then afterwards, we'll be able to do like effective Shot to attach Alucard back. And we added Renovation, so we can also send Renovation or whatever Ghostwreck card we added. So that's another send, and then because we attached Alucard to one of these guys, we can then make Utopic Future here, and then that will put Alucard in the graveyard again to grab Renovation one more time. And then we can then make Utopic Draco Future here for a total of like two to three like discards for our Kingsark. And this allows us to essentially resolve, like, assuming we have Imseti plus just Terratop, we just resolved the effect of Kingsark here with only 2 hand cards, and we also end up with Utopic Draco Future, and we still have like 3 other cards in hand, and we also drew 1 discard. So, in fact, this is the only situation where we plus off of the Imseti, essentially, right? So that's pretty epic, I guess one might say. And that is kind of the levels of extremes you would need to go, I think, to kind of just resolve Kingsark without going super negative in like, well, terms of like your hand cards, unless you were playing something like, yeah, once again, I guess I've said this many times, but it's just exactly Orcust. Unless you were playing like Orcust, you're going to go negative as hell from resolving Kingsark. So you would need to do this. And then if we had like one more one-card combo, I guess we could do it now, notably, since we still haven't normal summoned. But here we could somewhat reasonably make like 2 rank 8s afterwards, after we make like UDF and stuff, right? I guess before we even summon our Horus cards, we can summon Utopic Draco Future, so that's epic, I guess. So it kind of plays around Nib a little bit, I guess. Very little, but certainly is something. If we look at like size of this though, we already have to devote like 1/3 of our extra deck to this, and we threw in like 2 additional Garnets. And then also technically Takatomborg is also a Garnet, and we have to open like a very specific hand to kind of make this work. But there are different like cards that also can kind of do this combo, right? So if we actually open either Diabell Star or Wanted, we can do special summon like Poplar, and then we can do like original sinful spoils and stuff, right? Or Snake Eye Ash to summon our copy of Snake Eye Oak, and then that allows us to go into the Ghostwreck rank 1 and do the same kind of combo again to go into Utopic Draco Future, and that'll grab us like I guess all of these cards, right? And net us some form of advantage, but once again, like, not super amazing going second, but it is what it is. And this is probably like the best kind of way to generically play Horus is if you were able to utilize like the Ghost Rick package, I think. Aside from that, I don't think there's a really reasonable deck that can play Horus, right? Like, even if we were to play Phantom Knights, if we were to play Zombie World or anything like that, we just simply go so negative in hand, and we have to still deal with hand traps and all that. That makes this, in my opinion, like this entire engine, this package, only able to be useful for going first and requiring like a crap ton of engine or certain specific cards that work with Horus. So that leaves you less room with like non-engine, further taking away your ability to go second, right? So yeah, the fact that we're also pretty susceptible to hand traps here doesn't really help. And even if like the Horus cards were popular, you can see like from the amount of like just how screwed they get by Ash. You don't even have to run a specific tech like Ghost Ogre to pop the King Sark. So you're just absolutely chilling, I guess, right? So even if we did grab like a Ghost Ogre though, in terms of hand cards, the amount that of like hand cards, it doesn't really make sense to me to specifically run like Ghost Ogre or Horus. So let's see. If we have like City plus King Sark, we let's say we activate City, do the thing, right? Send City plus another card, we draw one card, we add King Sark, and then we activate King Sark from hand, discard a card. So now you discarded for cost, I pop your King Sark. You're at 3 cards here in hand. Same as Ash Blossom Joe Spring. So why do we care? The only time like this would somewhat matter, I think, is specifically if we didn't have Ash here and we just had Imperm, and instead you were trying to make like our I guess, does this even matter? Maybe a little bit. If we make the Photon Lord the rank 8, which is essentially just a monster negate, if we have Imperm, that doesn't actually do anything here. So if we were to normal summon a monster and then it just gets negated here, you just pass turn on one monster negate probably. And in this case, we still have 4 cards in hand here, and then if assuming we Ghost Ogre or Ash, we'd have 3, draw 1, 4 cards versus like a monster negate, and you have maybe 1 or 0 hand traps here. The only thing that's like slightly problematic is that you still have King Sark on field, so you can summon your Horus cards again, kind of. But you actually, now that I think about it, one of the cards, in this case, if we Imperm here, is going to be like attached to your guy, right? So you'd have to like send another Imseti probably. So your amount of hand cards doesn't really change the next turn. So yeah, this package grinds really well, I guess. But yeah, I don't think grind game is going to be that valuable. Like, there's a reason we don't have like every Snake Eye player ever playing like 1, 2, 3, or whatever, however many copies of Elblick, because technically you have a lot of spell traps to send with Elblick in Snake Eye, but no one's playing Elblick for the grind game and Snake Eye, so yeah, grind game I'd say not that valuable. So yeah, unless I'm missing something, Horus seems pretty awful and not playable generically at all. So yeah, if I'm missing something, feel free to tell me in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.